Welcome to Decoding the Conflict Mindset. Hi, I'm Dr. Deborah Dupree, the Mindset Doc. One of our goals of Decoding the Conflict Mindset podcast is to bring to people's awareness how they can navigate through differences, to have conversations, not confrontations, a different mindset. And to that end, I then bring to you numerous thought leaders who shed a different light on whatever their particular field is all about. Today, I'm so excited to bring to you Kenneth Lord. Now, Kenneth and I go back a few years. He was actually my business coach several years ago and really helped me clarify the direction I wanted to go and just what my message was and how I could influence people differently. And with that, Kenneth willingly shares how he knew it but didn't really believe it until things happened to him. And that's oftentimes what happens. We can learn things and know things, but we may not necessarily embody things. As Kenneth likes to say, he thought about many things of value, but it wasn't until he realized them wholeheartedly that they really sank in and made a difference in his life. The way he spoke, the way he taught, and even accepted things. I'll share a quote from him. Who we are for ourselves is in direct proportion to who we are for others. How we treat ourselves, how we speak with ourselves, how we are being is in direct proportion to how we treat others, how we speak with others, and who we are being for others. So these messages really targeted to today's leader. You know, the world has changed and it demands that we show up differently. And so I invite you to stay tuned. Don't miss out on Kenneth's important message because he knows, he sees it. He takes his own experiences to the clients he serves, entrepreneurs of all kinds. As he knows, and as I do, leaders who cultivate their emotional intelligence are far more successful in how they connect with and lead others. So stay tuned. Don't go away. Share this link with others. Invite others to come in. You're going to see Kenneth live in just a few moments. Welcome to Decoding the Conflict Mindset. Hi, I'm Dr. Deborah Dupree, the Mindset Doc. This podcast is all about looking at different ways to think, view, and act in our worlds. Because sometimes, how we think ourselves, we get in our own way. And so today, I'm very excited to have with me Kenneth Lord. Welcome, Kenneth.
Thank you, Deborah. It's an honor. It's a pleasure being here. And what's interesting and thing about you, Deborah, is that you really are a great example in the world for people. I've experienced it and I just really feel that way and demonstrated that over the last 30 days that you and I have been talking and sharing information and so forth. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate that because we do go back a few years, don't we?
Yep.
And so I want to share with our viewers, Kenneth and I worked together, I think it was back 2015, 2016, something like that. And you were actually my coach and helped me gain a lot of clarity about, I've always, lots of interests. And so it was like, too diffused and people kept telling me you got to focus. And so you helped me do that tremendously and partly why I do what I do today because getting that kind of clarity and focus. And so before we go on, I do want to just say, for viewers who may be coming onto this, please subscribe so you get an opportunity to hear people like Kenneth bring his pearls of wisdom to us because you too might want to take an opportunity to connect with Kenneth the way I have. And I was absolutely delighted when he reached out to me again these last few months and we finally got his appearance on our podcast today's schedule because I'm so excited for the message that you have, Kenneth, and what you bring to people. So subscribe, be aware, and you'll get this recording back. Okay?
Absolutely.
Great. Well, Kenneth, from knowing you, I know that your passion for over the last 20 years has been really helping people take quantum leaps into their visions and desires and to really take their lives to a whole new level. I'm looking forward to hearing a couple of your examples about how you've done that because I know you've got rich examples. And so, when we talk about, I love the topic or the title that you gave to your topic today, leadership is an inside job which expresses itself in the outside world. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just so marvelous and so ties into my whole mindset approach because we really do need to take a look at how we look at things and then how we show up. So I'd like you to elaborate a little bit more about some of these things because when you talk about insights, who we are for ourselves is in direct proportion to who we are for others. So elaborate a little bit more on your thoughts about that.
So essentially, I believe that everything that we do, everything that we speak, who we are, how we represent ourselves internally to ourselves is in direct proportion to how we express ourselves and share that with others. So whether it be, in a relationship, we're in a relationship with ourselves first, and then that expresses itself outside. How we speak to ourselves is in direct proportion to how we speak to others. How we treat ourselves is in direct proportion to how we treat others. And these things are so important And oftentimes, most people don't realize how important or significant that is, because it really is about our own relationship first. We are the co-creators. We are the ones who are conscious creators. We're the ones who are aligned with who we truly are. And it's important that we realize that it begins from within, and then everything that's within us. Even if we have a vision, for instance, we have a vision, we're projecting something, we're writing something down, all those things are going to mobilize themselves externally in one way or another. And the more intentional we are, and the more that we're direct we are, and the clearer we are in our mindset and how we're seeing it, the more it's going to show up in our lives in that way.
Couldn't have said it any better, because I totally, adhere to that, because so often the kind of clients I work with too is that they're not in alignment. Their intent does not match the impact that they have with others. And many people, and that's why I like to work around emotional intelligence, because many people are not very well self-aware, and therefore they don't self-manage very well. And so, yeah, it's really all about alignment. And as I oftentimes say, how you show up matters. Your
That's
presence matters.
That's right. That's such a great saying, actually.
Well, one of the things I wanted to dive further on is that, I like what you had to say as we were getting ready for this, is that I thought about many things of value, but it wasn't until I realized them wholeheartedly that they really sunk in and made a difference in my life, the way I spoke, taught, and even accepted things. So share with us just how you apparently made some pivots.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. And oftentimes, for example, let's just say that we're talking with someone and we make a specific statement, such as every decision sets up your next decision. And that decision changes the trajectory of your life. Okay, so let's just use that as an example. So what happens is that someone might say, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, but it's more of a mental that makes sense. When you realize how significant that statement is and how important it is with every single decision that you make, it's more of a realization. It's almost like you're embodying that, right? That experience of, wow, that makes so much sense. And it's realizing that when you're making that decision, so imagine for a moment, these decisions, and we hear a lot of communicators actually speak about your decisions are going to do this and they're going to change, they make a difference and so forth. I would say that it's important to ponder what that really is. So an example would be this. Every decision you make sets up your next decision. So you wake up in the morning and you get this kind of intuition to go to Starbucks. Now, you might be in the middle of focusing on your business and you're saying to yourself, well, I don't really want to go to Starbucks right now. I'm on this zone. I'm really focused on what I'm doing. However, what you really are doing is you're revving up and you're building. And maybe you're looking for, some funding to quantum your company. Maybe you really want to, or on a personal level, maybe you're looking for a soulmate, for instance, right? There's an internal wish, prayer kind of thing, right? So essentially, let's just say that you wake up, you get this insight to go to Starbucks, but because you're so focused, you kind of ignore that piece, right? And you say, I'm just going to stay home. I'm going to eat here. Okay. That one single decision has changed the trajectory of your life in whatever way that may be. I'm not saying it's good or bad or what have you, right? So let's just say you stayed home. Okay. That's what you've chose to do now, or you decided to do. But let's just say that you actually decided to listen and you went to Starbucks, and all of a sudden in front of you or behind you, you began to have a conversation with someone, and that person totally resonated with one another, and that became your soulmate, and or that became your investor, or that person connected you with someone that's going to propel your company or propel your idea and so forth, right? And because of that one simple decision changed, it shortened your time frame. It compressed time. It allowed you to do what it is that you're naturally good at or what you were focusing on. Now, if you miss that opportunity, you might go through another cycle because we are all interconnected. And so just that one simple conversation, that one decision that you made, it could be with anything. It could be turning right instead of left. It could be, and it happens in every moment of your life. So every decision, if you decide to yell at someone versus hold your place and not, yell at them, that one single decision that you made could traumatize that person or affect them emotionally. And maybe that's going to affect them in the future and or even with you, right? in terms of their emotions and how they look at something. One thing I will say is this, is that let's just say a woman gets traumatized somehow, okay? And she made a decision to go with a gentleman, for instance, and they were together for 6 months, and he abused her emotionally, verbally, etc., in whatever way. Well, that decision that she made at the beginning to go on a date with him and to decide to go out with him and to make him his or her partner, that one single decision right there wasn't the act itself that I'm talking about. It was the decision to go with that one person. It may have been based upon he's hot, he has money, there's some security, whatever those underlying thoughts are. That one single decision caused or created a distinction in terms of that point in her life where that decision and what happened between those two individuals could affect, and most likely will affect, the relationships that she has in the future. And when, let's just say that she does find the one, that one moment in time, that trauma or those experiences potentially could actually affect that relationship that didn't really need to be like that. It was only because of that one single decision that created and caused all these components. There's in every area of our lives, it's that way, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's interesting too. If people pause and stop and reflect, I like to call it be in the moment, and then breathe through the moment. And then visualize, break free from that moment to say, well, how do I want to show up? What do I want to project out there? How do I want to influence people by what I say and what I do? Because particularly as leaders, and I'm taking it back to leadership, as leaders, all eyes are always on you. People are watching what you do, and oftentimes people don't realize that. And so I'm going to start off with one of your key points, influence and the inner game. And so I'd like you to elaborate more on that, Kenneth, in terms of, how influence impacts people's lives and steps to take to get there. And then that whole inner game that we mentioned earlier.
So leadership, as we initiated this topic in this talk, it's really about, it begins with the inner part of our decisions and all of who we are, how we communicate with ourselves, and so forth, correct? So, and you can really look at any kind of research and see that's how it all plays out and works. So what's interesting about this topic and how we're moving in this kind of cycle or kind of this complete conversation here is that we influence each other. We influence each other whether we realize it or not. We influence each other, and based upon the level of influence that we give to one another, either with each other or over someone, okay, that's the level of impact that you're going to have in someone's life. For example, a celebrity, let's just say that you and I are talking for 5 minutes. We've influenced each other just in that 5 minutes because, whether it could be 5 minutes or 5 hours, because we've given something emotionally and energetically to someone, and that is this person has this, or they don't have this, and or we see them a certain way. And so we're creating this level of influence that we've given that person. Based upon that level is the impact that they're going to have in our lives. So on a celebrity standpoint or an influencer standpoint, there's a lot of people that will look up to influencers or celebrities. And that influence that we have given to that individual is the impact that they're going to have in our lives. If somebody wears something or they do something, so that's a high level of responsibility that these influencers have. And oftentimes it's important. And we all are influencers in each other's lives. Parents are what I call foundational influencers, because they're the ones who are birthing this child and during those beginning years. And so that influence that this celebrity or someone has, if we start wearing those clothes or wear hair this way or act this way or what have you, it's going to influence our lives in a huge way and impact our lives. I'll give you a short story that a few years ago, there was a girl who was 17. She was all over the news. And essentially what happened is that she kept texting, her and her boyfriend were depressed. You've heard the stories in the news and so forth. Her and her boyfriend were depressed. They were 17 or underage. And during the final year, hours and times, she kept texting him, kill yourself, okay, finish it, and so forth. Eventually, he killed himself. And what happened is that that influence that he gave to her impacted her life because she eventually went to jail. It impacted her family and all of her friends. It impacted him, clearly. It impacted all of his friends and family. And based upon the level of influence that he gave to her. So the influence that we give to each other is either going to be with a person or over someone. a long time ago, or there's still it now, but most of the time before, there was influence over someone. A dictator is usually influence over someone, correct? So, however, our world has changed a lot. And now you see more influence with each other. There's more collaboration. There's more connection. There's more hope. There's more moving in that direction of inspiration and positivity and helping one another and creating this collaboration between influencers and leaders and so forth, correct? So it's actually really important to hold our place in our power in order to know that we actually hold someone's, I'm going to say it boldly, destiny, heart, life in our hands based upon who we are, how we express ourselves, and the level of influence that we are given, because that level of influence is going to be based, or it's going to allow us to impact someone's life in a positive way or not so positive way, right? So when we're looking at this whole component of be a good example, and the communication that we have within is in direct proportion to how it is externally, how aligned we are. All of these are key components to, as you mentioned, in the moment, pause, be present in order to make the clearest decision based upon who you are, in order for the impact that you have with others to be the most positive, congruent, influential, integrous, and so forth, and that will help and heal versus hurt and cause pain.
Yes, because it really, I think, if you ask anybody, we all want health and happiness, but we oftentimes, again, aren't in alignment with, our mindset and how we come across to people. And I love how you say it, the influence we have on others. And particularly, again, wherever you're a leader, because we are all show up as leaders at some level, whether it's in our home or at work. And I work a lot with lawyers and mediators, tremendous influence when we're dealing with people in conflict coming into dispute resolution strategies. And so how we set the tone, how we move forward in our life becomes so critically important. And I like how you said it, is that, are you an example setter? Yeah, we always hear are you a role model? Well, a lot of people don't necessarily want to go to that level, really, but example setter, we provide examples of how we influence and show up with people all the time.
Yeah. And we're an example setter in a positive way or not so good, positive way, right? It's all going to be based upon who we are, how we communicate. And also, by the way, every word is either constructive or destructive. There's no in between. So in order to know how we're communicating with ourselves and how we're communicating with others, and there's no judgment in any of this. It's all about us understanding who we are. It's all about know thyself, the foundational principles, the golden rule. When we're communicating, we would want to, in my opinion, want to know, is every word that's coming out of our mouth, is it constructive or destructive? And the more constructive it is, of course, and also to add to that conversation impacts us first before it even goes out of our mouths, right? Because remember, it's an inner game. We're communicating with ourselves, and that's what's going to show up externally. And so it's important to realize, based upon what your intentions are, right? Because that's where it begins, if your conversation is going to be constructive or destructive.
Yeah. I know one of the things I oftentimes tell my clients is that, not everything that pops in your head has to come out of your mouth.
Sure.
Because oftentimes what pops in your head is exactly what you shouldn't be saying, because
Right.
It's going to be destructive in some way, hurtful, harmful, damaging, and you can't take it back,
Yeah,
so
that's true. So true.
That's why, I like to use the 4 phases of competency. At any given time, we are unconsciously incompetent. We just simply don't know what we don't know. But then something happens, and now I didn't know that I didn't know that. So now we can take steps now we're consciously incompetent. And then now we can take steps to learn more. And that's why I love working with assessments to help people uncover and discover and recover things that may have been buried by other events and just or lack of knowledge, so that we can be consciously competent, but not stop there. We want this new intention and this level of inner awareness to become unconsciously competent, so that we don't have to think about it anymore.
Absolutely.
And so much is in that moment of pausing and, wait a minute, what's going on for me? What do I want to say? And is what I'm going to say helpful, constructive, honorable, or am I just tearing people down?
Yeah. And there's so many ways that you can do that. Yeah. And in every situation, right? So somebody can come at you and start yelling or saying different things, and it's up to us. It's our decision. It's our choice to either react or respond, or how we do that. And we all have those experiences in our lives. And that's one of the reasons why I was saying at the beginning, you're such a great example, because you've just demonstrated it for me over the last couple of months in terms of, our conversations and so forth. So I'm very grateful for seeing that. And of course you've been that way all along, but just sharing that.
Well, I'd like to always say, Kenneth, is like, I am where I am today because I've done a lot of work on myself and, continued learning and all that kind of stuff. I'm a lifelong learner. I just got my doctorate degree, 10 years ago. And so wanted to know and understand people and the dynamics of people. But I wasn't always this way.
Sure.
I've made some big mistakes. And as a leader, I've had to learn some hard knocks, shall we say, in life. And I'll share with you, I was actually attending a webinar a couple of weeks ago, and I think many people probably agree with this, or at least have heard about it. But, behavioral health issues, mental health, is at an all-time high. And the attorney that I was listening to was talking about, some of the matters that she was handling, and it really boiled down to how leaders, although I don't know if I necessarily call everyone leaders, people in leadership, or whatever level that might be, were oftentimes the source of unhealthy conditions and mental distress in the workplace. And so one of the things that has been emerging is sort of a generational bias, because older generations don't necessarily have this insight and appreciation of more positive psychology and how we show up. Yeah. And so, ask all of our viewers and listeners to stop and think about how do they show up, particularly in the workplace, because the repercussions are endless. And I know that you have an example, Kenneth, you were sharing with me that I think would be so helpful, as far as an owner that had a business and how you helped that person grow, and how you actually removed somebody from the workplace temporarily to give them a refresh. So please share.
So basically, I had a client where he did these custom shelves. Okay. And so what happened is that when I came in, he and I were chatting, he was the only sales representative. So this is a pretty big warehouse with, probably 20 or 30 employees in the warehouse making these different shelves and so forth. And he had a right-hand guy. And so kind of give you the overview is that he was the only sales representative. His right-hand guy was given all this trouble, getting kind of mean with everybody and so forth. The warehouse itself was very unorganized, lots of clutter. It wasn't structured. There was nobody actually running, actually. So what happened is, as soon as I came in there, I asked the owner to let his right-hand guy go for 30 days paid. And, so that will resolve that and kind of get it out of the environment. And during this just a month or so, we brought in somebody to run and organize the warehouse. So now it's all efficient, it's organized, it's clean. The employees are working more effectively. We brought in a national sales representative. As soon as the right-hand gentleman came back, his place was repainted, reorganized. He was happier, more content. And also the owner was at more peace, because now he has more of an efficient, I think he scaled from 1 to 5 million in just a few months, and partly because we had this national sales rep, and a lot more things were much more efficient. Now, when you go into every Target and 7-Eleven, his shelves are the shelves that they use inside of 7-Eleven for your drinks, and also in Target, where you get your vitamins, those shelves are actually his shelves. So it's just amazing, the transformation of essentially what you mentioned, which is decoding a person and an environment, a culture, and just realizing that there's so much more once you get out of your own way, once you are able to become more efficient. And all that happened in just 3 months. So it was pretty instrumental to his business and really turning it around and catalyzing it. And I love to do that, because I feel like part of what occurs is that when we get into a place where there's so much going on, we're not really seeing through all the clutter. We always see below the clouds where we can just see the clouds. We're not seeing above the clouds where it's crystal clear. So when you bring someone in like you, Deborah, or myself or others, we're able to help them kind of basically see above the clouds and really begin to soar.
Oh, that's the thing. That reminds me of William Ury's, who's a famous international dispute resolutionist, from his book called Getting Past No. He coined a phrase called going to the balcony. And so I use that a lot, because going to the balcony in a theater, the best seats, right? You get to see everything, Sure. But when you're down on the floor, you have a limited view. And so by going to the balcony, you literally are redirecting your brain to step back and to look at things from a bigger perspective, like you said, above the clouds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, I'm curious because I know that you have a process then, a new done for you ecosystem for entrepreneurs to capture, nurture, and convert more leads so you can make more money. And so can you just give us 2 or 3 tidbits about what that process looks like so that, how do you get somebody going?
Right. So, well, essentially what happened is back in 2016, I had this whole epiphany and experience. And all of a sudden I started launching these different businesses. We started out with True Media, where we had this done for you for everything. And then it evolved into LinkedIn lead generation, and then text marketing. And then we built out a CRM and social media and a whole bunch of other things like that. And so essentially what happens nowadays is that when I'm talking with someone, it could be a podcast host where they need more audience. They need something, to move the needle. It could be a speaker or coach where they need more speaking engagements, or maybe they need more clients, for instance. It could be a brick and mortar company, right? So many of the things that we're doing are customized, but aligned with what we already currently do, right? If somebody wants to build funnels or create a membership site, or they want any kind of outreach, LinkedIn or text or any of those kinds of things that I mentioned, essentially we can do any of those things inside of our system. One of the things that I love, one of the services that I love is where it's called content mastery. And what we do is we interview somebody for an hour each month, and then we edit all those pieces. And then we create blogs and articles and then distribute that all across all their socials and really kind of start scaling them and their brand, their business, and so forth, and their message, so that they can have more of whatever that is. It could be audience, leads, and then we convert them and nurture, and all within our system. And we have currently, I think, 45 full-time employees. 5 of those are video editors. So, it's really kind of whatever it is that an entrepreneur needs to mobilize and monetize their idea, their vision, their business, and their brand. So,
oh, that sounds pretty fascinating, actually.
It's fun.
Yeah, I bet. And I imagine too is that you get an opportunity to meet some pretty incredible people in terms of, and I think what I heard you say earlier is the conversations that they have inside, and sometimes people are definitely focus on the external and have great ideas and things like that, and yet can be challenged in how they implement those ideas into action.
Completely.
And that sort of sounds like the core of, as I said, stepping back before you step forward and sort of what's going on here.
That's right. So the first phase is really us getting together and me helping to help somebody get clear and walk with you. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's really what it's all about, is walking with you, and then creating those processes and identifying what's in your way, for instance, helping to remove those blocks, getting unstuck, being there present, holding accountable, doing, essentially whatever it is that, who you are and how you want to express yourself in the world from the internal, externally, is what we initially do. So that's working with me. And then I call them tools. And then that the tools allow to mobilize. So last thing I'll say about that is I created something called the 3 M's, which every industry and every company and every entrepreneur needs, which is the first is the 3 M's, which is your message, right? So we help you identify your message and create clarity around that. The next one is the model or the method. So we help you to kind of unfold that and to create packaging around that and so forth. And the mediums are any kind of medium. It could be writing a book, it could be speaking, it could be webinar, it could be funnels or membership, any of those things. So essentially we're the A to Z, more or less. What I love, my part of it, where I love it, is I love what we're doing, right? Which is unfolding all those components and helping people to quantum into their new next generation, basically. So it just comes naturally. I've been doing for a long time. So.
Oh, great. Yeah, because a few things that you've said remind me too is that, I tend to focus on the people in conflict, and that can be internally and externally, but also I go at it a little bit differently in the sense of, is this conflict, well, sometimes conflict is driven organizationally, sometimes the leader at the top or the leader of a department or something like that, not effective in what they do, or maybe the organization is not structured in a way that's healthy and appropriate. Sometimes it's actually technology, processes, or systems.
Yeah.
And so I found situations of where I remember one department where I was working with a whole team of people. When we really broke down the frustrations and what was going on, it was really an outdated system that they were using to manage the work that they did. And then, of course, is it the people? I'm actually doing mediation tomorrow where I'm actually dealing with the whole team of people. And I've had a chance to interview each of them to have an idea of where they're coming from, where their own internal conflicts might be, but to help uncover that, to look both internally but also externally and the impact that they're having on the team. So that's the way I sort of look at conflict organizationally, systems, processes, technology, and of course the people. And I focus a lot on communication styles because there are just natural conflicts that come in because of our four main communication styles. And again, as you said, constructive versus destructive. And people just don't realize sometimes on how they show up and how they can influence. And that goes back to one of my earlier questions too, is you talked about decision-making and the trajectory of your life. Sounds like you really fold that in terms of how you're working with individuals or organizations in terms of looking at that process. And could you just give us a quick example about how that really happens?
Let's talk about what you just described, actually. So, for instance, say you're in a team, okay, and you're in that environment. And let's just say that there's 10 of you, for example, okay? The question becomes, one is when everyone understands the principles that I'm sharing right now, which is every decision, every word, and so forth. And when you really convey that to others, and now you begin to bring those individuals together and have them work together or side by side, whether it be on a project or an idea or identify something in pairs or in fours, then what happens is that you get a really clear, quick understanding of where someone's at. And also, they also get a really clear understanding of where they're at, how they're communicating, how they're reacting or responding, and how they can become better example setters, better leaders for those that are around them. And so I would say that, just by sharing all of what we're talking about right now with these individuals that you've worked with or those that you're going to be working with, I believe that what happens is that they begin to shift. Because here's the thing, once you help someone become more aware of something, or that person gets an aha moment, which, by the way, it can happen in 5 minutes and always happens in conversations. So just as a side note, we change each other's lives, whether we realize it or not, in every single conversation, because something is going on between us. That person got a new idea, they got this understanding or something that changed that person's life in just that moment. So when they understand these things, they become more aware of these topics and how to, inside of a team, for instance, they want to hold themselves accountable. They want to hold themselves at a higher place, especially if they have a great, what I call true leader, rather than just a leader who is helping them to become better leaders and example setters, right? Because a true leader is what's going to happen is they're going to actually be the leader that the individuals are going to be looking towards and for. Because why? Because first of all, there's a level of authority that's already built in that person. They've already experienced and expressed things with that individual, for instance. And what happens is our eyes are the windows to the soul. So we're always looking through someone to understand better who we are. And the more that we understand that in all the faculties, for instance, and again, it doesn't even mean that leader or that person needs to even know, usually doesn't know that somebody else is watching them and looking at them, kind of like what you mentioned at the beginning, right? So the better that we are as our true leaders, those individuals, that team essentially is going to look at that person, towards that person, become more aware, want to be better, and hold their place in their true power. And these principles are going to allow for them to give them more awareness into becoming more of that. Okay, it's really just giving that one single understanding of every word is either constructive or destructive. That's simple, seems so simple, yet is so profound and essential to who we are. And if we go deeper into that training or that conversation in a group of individuals that are working as a team, now and every conversation within us, reflects outside of us and so forth, then our intentions become more intentional in terms of becoming better, more aligned with who we are, being a better team itself, right? and holding each other accountable, not in a negative way, but in a positive way.
Yeah, there's so much about what you just said that, it's about getting feedback. And that's one thing about leaders at whatever level are almost afraid. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but, about getting feedback, particularly the higher you go up, and yet we need to learn from the information around us. And that means information from other people in terms of how we impact them and influence them.
Mm-hmm.
It can be
Absolutely.
positive or negative or constructive or destructive. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's really no in between, by the way. There really isn't.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to see that there's either gravity or there's not. That's just what it is.
Yeah, you don't suspend right in the middle, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Kenneth, then, as far as, where do you find the time? How do you position yourself and so that you can, continue to grow, learn, and like you said, when you've really embodied some of these concepts yourself? And is there something about road trips that I've heard about?
Yeah. So for me, I love road trips. And so I would say that probably 2 to 6 hours a day, I'm pondering, I'm reflecting. The real reason behind, I've been doing it for years. And the real reason is because if I were going to kind of dissect that a little bit, it's really intending to make the best decision, being totally aligned with who I am, so that what is that decision and the alignment and the outcome of that happens in the shortest amount of time with the fewest number of steps and has the greatest result and or impact in my life and or for others. And so that this intention has essentially run my life. And I use that same principle with my clients as well as myself. Oftentimes they want to generate an ROI for, their investment. Okay, great. Let's make this happen in 30 days, 60 days. How can we make this happen right now? It could be that they want an impact, or an outcome. Okay, great. Let's take a couple of months. And in the example I gave earlier was just a few months to make some really drastic and positive progress in that company's life, in their business. And so I realized that every single moment versus say every minute, it's essential to be conscious and cognitive is in relation to how we speak. And everything I'm sharing with you is how I live my life, every moment of my life. So I'm consciously, cognizant of every single part of my day, what's happening. There's always these internal inquiries about what's going to get me here, what's going to allow me to do this one thing. For instance, hey, I need to generate X of dollars, or I need to, reach this, this place so that I can do these other things. It could be, hey, I want to reach 1 million people. How do I do that in the shortest amount of time, fewest number of steps? Okay, it could be through, podcasting. It could be talking to a couple of friends of mine that already have some major influence. It could be, building up a whole media marketing campaign to, start scaling. These are just examples. So it's really that inquiry to me that allows there to be a clarity point in every conversation I'm having with myself. And it's always about my quantum. It's not about just give me 1 or 2 steps. It's not ever about that. It's more like, okay, I need to get here or do this. So how am I going to do this? What are those ways in which I need to do this? And then I begin to reverse engineer that and create structures and strategies and packaging and pricing and systems and all the stuff that I need. But I'm always looking at what are those 2 or 3 steps that are going to allow me to really scale fast, not just because I have 20 things on my list, okay, for the day, but those 20 things are going to take me a long time. It could take me a week. Okay. So I'll say, what are those 2 or 3 things that are going to get me where I want to be by tomorrow or the next day?
Right.
Because essentially all the other things will be covered more or less as long as I can, take these 3 steps, for instance. Right.
Right.
And so I'm just sharing this as it relates to myself, but also for others, maybe hopefully to help them.
Yeah. Well, I like this quote. I actually have it on my website where I have 3 steps to mindset shift. And so it's, 3 steps I take people through, but read it. And I apologize if I, slaughter this French name because I don't know French. A goal without a plan or a vision without a plan is just a dream.
Yeah.
And so you really spoke to that just now as far as, chunking it down and developing steps, with one thing you can do today, what are the 3 things by the end of the week, and like you said, a 30-day, a 60-day, again, a time frame becomes so critical. But the author, and you can visit my website if you want to see it, is Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I hope I said it right. My daughter will probably kill me as far as not having it right. So anyway, Kenneth, it's been a delight to have you here. And I know you have a leadership roundtable. So very quickly, how do people get more information on that? And how do they reach you?
You can reach me by email, KennethLord@yahoo.com. Very simple. You can go to my website, KennethLord.info, and enter in your contact information. The Leadership Roundtable, I'm happy to give you that information. It doesn't have a direct link right this moment where I can give you a URL. But if you contact me via the email or via my website, I'm happy to give it to you, and you can come to the roundtable.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'm excited to learn more about your things. I know you've had some other past programs called the Inner Game and Mastering Leadership, and so again, lots of opportunities to grow and learn with you. And Kenneth, again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Deborah. I appreciate you. You're amazing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And so hopefully our viewers and listeners have learned more about decoding their own mindset and helping them, get out of their own way. I oftentimes joke and say, imagine where I could be if I just got out of my own way more often,
It's true.
Yeah.
But true.
So listeners and viewers, please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you like what you heard today with Kenneth, please pass it on. Love you to share it out there with other people who may benefit from listening to this podcast. And don't go away, because we will be having more great thought leaders like Kenneth coming your way. And so again, Dr. Deborah Dupree, the Mindset Doc. Well, I hope you enjoyed what Kenneth had to share with us today about his own insights, awareness, and perspectives of how he changed himself and how he now uses that change to influence others. And so if you want to know more about him, do visit Kenneth. He has a new program called Done For You Ecosystem for Entrepreneurs to capture, nurture, and convert more leads so you can make more money. So check him out. But now I want to let you know somebody pretty amazing coming our way too. This time we're going to shift a little bit to what women can do in today's work world. I bring to you Edna Curie. And Edna has a very exciting background, interesting depth of experience, education. Being a former engineer, she found that her intellect wasn't quite enough to cut it when it came to the, shall we say, politics of making a difference and moving up in the world of organizations. And so Edna really took a deep dive into what she could do for herself. And so she specializes in helping women in today's work world be more assertive without coming across as aggressive. I think many of us have heard this before, where if a man is assertive or aggressive, that's considered strong. But if a woman is assertive and is oftentimes perceived as aggressive, and that is not okay. And so Edna takes a deep dive into that. And so again, mark your calendars. 2 weeks from now, she'll be back, and you'll learn much, much, much about how to be assertive in today's work world. Again, Dr. Deborah Dupree, the Mindset Doc. Don't go away. Subscribe, pass it on, and we look forward to having you here back with us soon.